I've spent time near classified facilities during my service. Not Area 51, but places you won't find on maps. Places where you pull guard duty and you're told very clearly. You watch the perimeter. You report anything unusual. And you don't ask questions about what's behind that fence. Simple enough, right? Except it's never simple. I remember this one rotation at a facility I can't name, pulling midnight watch with another Marine. We're both bored out of our minds, and he asks me, "You ever wonder what they're actually doing in there?" I gave him the standard answer. Doesn't matter. Not our job to know. But he kept going. Yeah, but what if something went wrong? What if there was a fire, or a breach, or the power went out? What's the protocol? Do we go in, or do we keep people out? I didn't have an answer. Neither did our platoon sergeant when we asked him later. You follow your orders, he said. You hold the perimeter. What happens inside those walls is above your pay grade. That conversation stuck with me because he was right to ask. We talk about need-to-know basis, like it's this clean, simple thing. But when you're the guy with the rifle standing between whatever's inside and the outside world, you kind of do need to know. At least the basics. At least enough to know if you should be running toward a problem or away from it. Most of the time, nothing happens at these places. You pull your watch, you stay alert, you go home. But every now and then, something does happen. Something goes wrong in a way nobody planned for. And the people who are there, the ones who see it, they carry that with them. Sometimes they talk about it. More often, they don't. What I'm about to tell you happened at the most famous classified facility in America. A place that officially doesn't even exist, despite being on every conspiracy theorist's map. Area 51, Groom Lake, Dreamland, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, the power went out. What walked out of that darkness wasn't what anyone expected. And the truth is so much stranger than the cover story they fed to the public. Let me take you back to March 1997. March 15th, 1997, Groom Lake, Nevada. The thing about Area 51 that most people don't understand is how incredibly boring it is. At least for the security contractors who pull perimeter duty. The real work happens deep inside those hangars and underground facilities. But if you're manning the outer checkpoints, you're basically a very well-paid scarecrow, keeping curious civilians away from a stretch of desert. Staff Sergeant Michael Brennan had been working security at the facility for 14 months. Former Army, solid service record, recruited by EG&G Special Projects after his discharge. The pay was excellent. The work was mind-numbing. He sat in a guard shack 3 miles from the main complex, monitoring cameras, checking the occasional supply truck credentials, and watching jackrabbits hop across the restricted zone. The night of March 15th started like any other. Brennan's shift began at 2200 hours. Clear sky, temperature dropping into the 40s, wind kicking up dust devils in the distance. He settled into his post with a thermos of coffee and a Tom Clancy novel he'd already read twice. Lima 6, this is command. Radio check. The voice crackled through his handset. Lima 6, loud and clear, Brennan responded. Standard procedure. They ran communications checks every 30 minutes. What Brennan didn't know, what none of the perimeter security knew, was what was happening in Hangar 18 that night. According to documents that would later be leaked through Freedom of Information Act requests, heavily redacted of course, there was a scheduled test of what the paperwork called experimental propulsion systems. The details are blacked out. The technical specifications are classified. But we know the test was scheduled for 23:30 hours. Inside the facility's main operations center, Senior Airman Patricia Chen monitored a bank of screens showing power distribution across the complex. Area 51 ran on its own dedicated power grid, independent from Nevada's civilian infrastructure. 3 massive diesel generators provided backup redundancy. The system was designed to never fail. Chen had been stationed at Groom Lake for 8 months. She was 24 years old, sharp, detail-oriented, and cleared for top-secret SCI. She knew more about the facility's operations than Brennan ever would. She knew about the hangar test scheduled for that night. She'd routed additional power to the facility as requested. At 2320 hours, she noticed something odd. a fluctuation in the power draw from Hangar 18. Nothing critical, but unusual. The readings were spiking higher than the test parameters indicated they should. "Sir, I'm seeing some irregular power consumption from Hangar 18, she reported to the night supervisor, Captain David Park. Park walked over to her station, studied the monitors. "How irregular?" "They requested 2.3 megawatts for the test. They're pulling almost 4 inches. Park frowned. He picked up the phone, direct line to Hangar 18. It rang 6 times. No answer. He tried the backup line. Same result. "That's not normal," Chen said quietly. At 23:27 hours, Brennan was pouring his 3rd cup of coffee when he noticed the lights. Not at his checkpoint. Those were fine. But in the distance, toward the main complex, he saw something strange. The facility's exterior lighting seemed to be brightening, not dramatically, but noticeably, like someone was slowly turning up a dimmer switch. He raised his binoculars. The main hangars were lit up brighter than he'd ever seen them. And there was something else, a kind of shimmer in the air above Hangar 18. Like heat distortion on asphalt in summer, except it was 50 degrees outside. "Command, this is Lima 6. Are you seeing anything unusual from the main complex? Over. Static. Command, Lima 6, do you copy?" More static, then a broken transmission. Reading massive. All stations maintain. Then nothing. At 23:29 hours, Patricia Chen watched her screens go haywire. Every meter, every gauge, every sensor was redlining. The power draw from Hangar 18 had spiked to over 15 megawatts. That was impossible. The facility couldn't even generate that much power. "Sir, we need to shut this down," she shouted. Captain Park was already reaching for the emergency shutdown protocols when every screen in the operations center went white. Pure white. Not snow, not static. Just blinding white light emanating from the displays themselves. Chen threw her arm over her eyes. She heard Park yelling into phones, heard other personnel shouting, heard alarm klaxons beginning to wail. And then, at exactly 2330 hours, every lighted Area 51 went out. Not just the lights. Everything. The screens, the computers, the backup generators, the emergency lighting. Everything electrical stopped functioning simultaneously. The operations center was plunged into absolute darkness. In his checkpoint 3 miles away, Brennan sat in sudden, complete blackness. His coffee cup fell from his hand. His radio was dead. The camera monitors were dark. Even his digital watch had stopped working. He looked toward the main complex. In the darkness of the Nevada desert, with no moon that night, he couldn't see anything. Then, slowly, his eyes began to adjust, and he saw lights in the distance. Not the facility's lights, those were dead. These lights were moving. Michael Brennan's training kicked in automatically. Power failure, communications down, possible security breach. He needed to report to the main complex immediately, but his vehicle wouldn't start. He turned the key again and again. Nothing. Not even the clicking of a dead battery. The truck was completely dead. He grabbed his flashlight from the equipment locker. Dead. He tried his backup. Also dead. He had a crank-powered emergency light, standard issue for exactly this kind of situation. He cranked it furiously and was rewarded with a weak, flickering beam. Through that thin light, he could see his breath now. The temperature had dropped noticeably. That didn't make sense. It had been in the 40s. Now, it felt closer to freezing. Brennan secured his sidearm and started walking toward the main complex, 3 miles in the dark. He'd done longer movements during training, but never in complete technological dead zone like this. Every instinct told him something was catastrophically wrong. Those lights in the distance were still moving. As he walked, squinting into the darkness, he could count at least 7 or 8 distinct light sources. Flashlights, maybe, but they were moving erratically, not in the organized pattern you'd expect from personnel evacuating a facility. They were spreading out in different directions, some moving fast, others slow and wandering. After about 10 minutes of walking, Brennan heard something that made him stop cold. A voice in the distance, shouting. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Someone was afraid. Then he heard a sound that didn't belong in the Nevada desert. A low, pulsing hum. Not mechanical, it was almost organic, rising and falling in pitch. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Brennan raised his pistol, though he had no idea what he'd be shooting at. In the operations center, Patricia Chen was trying not to panic. The room was pitch black. Captain Park had a small LED pen light on his keychain, and by some miracle, it still worked. The thin beam cut through the darkness as he swept it across the room. "Everyone stay calm," Park said, his voice steady despite the situation. "Emergency protocol. We secure this room and wait for backup power to kick in." "Sir, the backup generators should have engaged automatically," Chen said. "They're diesel, mechanical. They don't depend on the main grid." "I know, Airman. So why aren't they running?" Park had no answer for that. In the dim light of his pen light, Chen could see his jaw clenched tight. Whatever had happened, it had taken out systems that shouldn't have been affected by any normal power failure. "Try your radio," Park ordered. Chen pulled her handheld from her belt. Dead. She tried the landline phone. Dead. Even the emergency PA system was non-functional. "Sir, we're completely dark. No communications, no power, nothing. This isn't just a grid failure. Something killed everything electronic in the facility." There were 6 other personnel in the operations center, 2 other communications specialists, a security officer, and 3 night shift supervisors from different departments. Chen could hear their breathing in the darkness, could sense their fear. "What about Hangar 18? One of the supervisors asked. "They were running that test. Could they have caused this?" Park's light swung toward the man. "We don't speculate. We follow protocols." But Chen was already thinking about those power readings she'd seen right before the blackout. 15 megawatts. That was more power than the entire facility should be able to produce. Where had it come from? What had they been doing in that hangar? A new sound interrupted her thoughts. Footsteps in the corridor outside the operations center. Running footsteps. Multiple people. Clark moved to the door, his penlight in one hand, his service weapon in the other. "Identify yourself." The footsteps didn't stop. They ran past the door and continued down the hallway, fading into the distance. "That's wrong," Chen whispered. "Why wouldn't they respond?" Park tried the door handle. Locked. The magnetic locks had engaged when the power died, sealing the operations center. They were trapped. Brennan was now about a mile from the main complex. He could see the dark silhouettes of the hangars against the starlight. The moving lights had spread out across the facility. Some had disappeared entirely. Others seemed to be converging on specific locations. That humming sound was louder now. It made his teeth ache, made his vision blur slightly at the edges. He'd never experienced anything like it. Then he saw something that made him drop to a crouch instinctively. One of those lights was moving toward him. Fast. Not running speed fast. Faster than that. It was weaving between buildings, and the light itself seemed wrong. Too bright. Too white. Like a magnesium flare rather than a flashlight beam. Brennan aimed his pistol at the approaching light. "Federal officer, stop and identify yourself." The light stopped. It was about 200 yards away now, behind a storage building. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the light moved again, but not toward him. It darted to the left, disappeared behind another structure. Brennan tracked it with his weapon, his heart hammering. This wasn't right. People didn't move like that. Even at a dead sprint, the light had changed direction too quickly, too sharply. He heard that voice again. Closer now. It wasn't shouting anymore. It was calling out words he couldn't quite understand. Not English, not Spanish, something else. The cadence was wrong, the phonemes alien. Brennan began backing away slowly. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his training held. Never turn your back on a threat. Never run blindly in the dark. The humming intensified. It was inside his head now, making his ears ring, making his vision swim. He could feel it in his chest, vibrating his ribcage, and then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. Brennan could hear his own breathing, harsh and rapid. Could hear the wind rustling through the sparse desert brush. Could hear his pulse pounding in his ears. One of the lights appeared on top of a hangar roof. It was still for a moment, as if looking down at the facility. Then it began moving across the roof. Too fast. Impossibly fast. Brennan made a decision. He needed backup. He needed to get to the main security building where there should be other armed personnel, where there might be answers. He started moving at a tactical jog, his weapon up, his crank light off to avoid drawing attention. The starlight was enough to navigate by. Barely. As he ran, he passed something that made him stop. A vehicle. A Humvee. Doors open. Engine dead. In the driver's seat, slumped forward against the steering wheel, was a security contractor he recognized. Miller. Good guy. Former Navy. Miller! Brennan shook his shoulder. Miller jerked upright, gasping. His eyes were wide, terrified. "Don't let them see you," he whispered. "They're looking for something. Don't let them see you." "Who? What are they looking for?" But Miller just shook his head, his hands trembling. "They came out of Hangar 18. After the lights. They just walked out, and now they're spreading through the facility." Brennan felt ice in his stomach. "Who came out? What are you talking about?" Miller grabbed his arm, his grip painfully tight. "Not who. What? And they're not alone anymore." Brennan tried to get more information from Miller, but the man was in shock. His pupils were dilated, his breathing shallow. Brennan helped him out of the Humvee and got him sitting on the ground with his back against the vehicle. "Miller, listen to me. I need you to focus. What did you see? What came out of Hangar 18? Miller's eyes darted across the darkness. "The test. They were running a test. I was on patrol near Hangar 18 when the power surged. The whole building lit up like a goddamn sun. Then everything went dark. And the doors just opened." "Opened how? Automatically?" "No, someone opened them from the inside. But the way they moved," Miller trailed off, his hands shaking. "They were wrong. All wrong." Before Brennan could press further, he heard voices, not the alien-sounding calls from before. These were English, shouting commands. He recognized the cadence. Military. A group of lights appeared around the corner of a nearby building. Real flashlights this time, proper tactical beams. A team of 6 security personnel, all armed, moving in formation. "Contact," one of them shouted. "Identify." "Staff Sergeant Brennan, Lima 6 checkpoint. Don't shoot." Brennan kept his hands visible, his weapon pointed down. The team leader approached, his light sweeping over Brennan and Miller. Brennan recognized him. Chief Master Sergeant Rodriguez, head of facility security. 30 years military experience, most of it classified. "Brennan, good. We're consolidating personnel. What's your status?" "All electronics dead at my post. Communications down. Vehicle non-functional." I walked in and found Miller here in shock. "Chief, what the hell is going on?" Rodriguez's face was grim. "We're treating this as a security breach and potential hostile situation. Did you see anyone else?" "I saw lights, moving fast, too fast, and I heard sounds, not English." Rodriguez exchanged glances with his team. "Those aren't ours. We don't know what they are yet. We're heading to the command bunker to link up with any surviving communications equipment. You're with us now." They moved as a unit through the facility. Rodriguez had 4 functional flashlights between 6 men. Whatever had killed the electronics, it wasn't uniform. Some devices still worked, most didn't. There was no pattern Brennan could see. As they moved, Rodriguez filled them in. At 2330 hours, we experienced a complete facility-wide power failure. All backup systems non-responsive. We have confirmation that Hangar 18 was running a scheduled test immediately prior to the incident. As of now, we have no contact with anyone who was inside that hangar during the test. "How many people?" Brennan asked. 12. 8 technicians, 3 scientists, 1 security observer. 12 people. And now there were at least 8 of those strange lights moving through the facility. They reached the command bunker, a reinforced underground facility designed to withstand anything short of a nuclear strike. The entrance was a heavy blast door that required manual operation when the power was out. It took 4 men to crank it open. Inside, emergency chemical lights cast a sickly green glow. About 20 personnel had assembled there, a mix of security, operations staff, and a few civilians in lab coats. The air was tense, frightened. Captain Park was there, having somehow escaped from the locked operations center. Patricia Chen stood next to him, her face pale. "Chief Rodriguez," Park said, relief evident in his voice. "Status? Facility-wide electronics failure. Cause unknown. We have multiple unidentified contacts moving through the complex. They appear to be human-sized but exhibiting abnormal movement patterns." A voice spoke up from the corner. "They're not human." Everyone turned. A man in a white lab coat stepped forward. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, with the kind of haunted look Brennan had seen on combat veterans. His name tag read, Dr. Marcus Webb. "Explained," Rodriguez ordered. Webb's hands were shaking. "I was in the observation room adjacent to Hangar 18 during the test. I saw what happened. The bunker went silent. Everyone waited. The project designation was Dreamcatcher," Webb began. "We weren't testing propulsion systems. That was the cover story. We were testing a theoretical weapon system based on manipulating electromagnetic fields at the quantum level. The idea was to create localized disruptions in electronic systems. A targeted EMP effect without the nuclear detonation." Chen spoke up. "The power draw. I saw the meters before everything died. 15 megawatts. That's impossible." Webb nodded. "The system wasn't supposed to draw more than 3. Something went wrong. The field generator achieved what we called coherent resonance. Instead of disrupting electronics, it started amplifying, feeding back into itself. The power draw increased exponentially. We tried to shut it down, but the controls were fried." "What about the people inside?" Park asked. Webb's face crumbled. "The field. It did something to them, to their nervous systems. The human body runs on electrical impulses. Every thought, every movement, every heartbeat. When the field reached critical mass, it interfaced with the neural activity of everyone in the hangar." Brennan felt his stomach turn. "Interfaced how?" "Their consciousness was altered, expanded maybe, or fragmented. I don't know. Through the observation window, I saw them convulsing, saw the lights. Not from equipment, from them. Their bodies were generating visible light, bioluminescence, but not like anything in nature. It was like watching electricity arc across their skin." He paused, took a shuddering breath. Then the entire facility went dark. The field had spread, an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to kill everything electrical within several miles. And when the hangar doors opened, they walked out, all 12 of them. But they weren't walking right. They were moving too fast. Their coordination was off, and they were glowing. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. Rodriguez maintained his composure. "Are they hostile?" "I don't know. They seemed confused, searching for something. When I ran, one of them called out to me. It sounded like Dr. Reeves, one of the scientists, but the words were wrong, scrambled, like he was trying to speak but his brain couldn't form the words properly anymore." Brennan thought about what Miller had said. "They're looking for something. What are they looking for?" Webb met his eyes. "I think they're looking for a way to reverse what happened to them. They're still human, still thinking, but the field rewired their neural pathways. They're trapped in bodies that don't work the way they should anymore. Bodies that generate electromagnetic fields that kill any technology they get near." "Can we help them?" Chen asked quietly. "I don't know. All our research data was in the hangar computers. Everything's wiped now. We'd be starting from zero." Rodriguez made a decision. "All right, here's what we do. We establish a safe perimeter around this bunker. We use non-electronic weapons only. No radios, no night vision. We wait for dawn and reassess. With daylight, we'll have better visibility and can mount a proper response." "What about them?" Brennan gestured toward the facility above. "The people from Hangar 18. Do we treat them as hostiles?" "We treat them as unknowns. Non-lethal force if possible. But if they pose a direct threat to personnel, you are authorized to engage." Webb shook his head. "You don't understand. They're not just glowing. That light is a visible manifestation of the electromagnetic field each of them is generating. Get too close, and your nervous system will be affected. I saw it happen to one of the security guards who tried to help. He collapsed, started seizing. His pacemaker stopped working. The implications sank in. These 12 people weren't just victims of a failed experiment. They were walking electromagnetic weapons. Approaching them was potentially fatal, and somewhere in the dark facility above, they were still searching. Brennan thought about the voice he'd heard, the strange words. If Webb was right, these were people trying to communicate, trying to ask for help, but trapped in bodies that had been fundamentally altered at the neurological level. We need to find a way to communicate with them, he said. If they're still conscious, still aware, we might be able to talk them into a contained area, somewhere we can study the effect and look for a reversal. Rodriguez considered this. Webb, is that possible? Maybe, if we can get them to understand we're trying to help, but their sensory processing is compromised. They might not perceive us the same way anymore, might not understand speech, might not even recognize us as human. A sound echoed down from above, a metallic clanging, then another. Something was testing the blast door. Everyone in the bunker tensed. Rodriguez gestured for weapons up. The clanging continued, regular, rhythmic, like someone knocking, or like someone who'd forgotten how to open a door. The knocking continued, slow, deliberate. Each impact sent a dull echo through the bunker. Rodriguez positioned his team at the blast door, weapons ready. Brennan was among them, his pistol feeling inadequate for whatever was on the other side. Webb, Rodriguez called softly. If we open this door, what are we dealing with? The scientist moved closer, his face pale in the chemical light. If it's one of them, the electromagnetic field will affect anyone within about 10 feet. You'll feel it first as disorientation, nausea, then motor control issues. If you're exposed too long, unconsciousness, maybe worse. Can we shield against it? Not without warning. We'd need Faraday cages, specialized equipment. We have nothing like that readily available. The knocking stopped. In the silence that followed, they heard a voice, muffled through the heavy door but unmistakably human, or what used to be human. Please, help us. The words were stretched out, distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. But the desperation was clear. Chen stepped forward. That's Dr. Reeves. I recognize his voice. He's asking for help. Or it's mimicry, someone suggested, like a predator imitating prey. They're not predators, Webb said firmly. They're victims. 12 people who were just doing their jobs, and now they're trapped in a nightmare they can't escape. Brennan made a decision. He moved to a ventilation duct in the wall, one that led up to the surface. If he could see who was at the door without opening it, they'd have more information. Chief, permission to reconnoiter via the air shaft? Rodriguez nodded. Do it, but carefully. Brennan climbed into the duct, his crank light in his teeth, his pistol holstered. The shaft angled upward, narrow and claustrophobic. After about 30 feet, he reached a grate that opened to the surface near the bunker entrance. He peered through the grate. There were 3 of them. They stood in the darkness about 15 feet from the blast door. Their bodies gave off that same white light Webb had described, bright enough to cast shadows. But it wasn't steady. It pulsed, like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, Brennan could see their forms more clearly. They were still recognizably human, still wearing the clothes they'd had on during the test. But their movements were wrong. One of them swayed slightly, as if standing still was difficult. Another kept turning their head in sharp, bird-like motions. The third stood perfectly still, but their hands were opening and closing rhythmically. The still one spoke again. We cannot control. The voice was Dr. Reeves. Brennan was certain of it now. But something was terribly wrong with the cadence, the tone. It was like hearing someone speak underwater. Brennan made his way back down to the bunker. It's 3 of them, he reported. They're not acting aggressive. One of them is trying to communicate. It's Reeves. Webb sagged with relief and despair simultaneously. James, God, James is still in there. Rodriguez weighed the options. If we open the door, we risk exposure. If we don't, we abandon 12 people who need help. We can't just leave them out there, Chen said. There are people. Park spoke up. We need to establish communication protocols. Find out what they want, what they need. Webb, is there any way to communicate without direct exposure? Webb thought for a moment. Maybe. If we crack the door just enough for verbal communication, keep the distance. The field strength decreases with distance. At 15, 20 feet, it should be manageable for short exposure. All right, Rodriguez decided. We try talking. But everyone not essential backs away from the door. Maintain 30 feet minimum. Most of the bunker personnel retreated to the far wall. Rodriguez, Brennan, Webb, Park, and Chen stayed near the door. Rodriguez positioned himself at the manual crank mechanism. I'm opening at 6 inches, he announced. If anything goes wrong, I close it immediately. He began cranking. The blast door was designed to move slowly, deliberately. As it opened, that pulsing white light spilled through the gap. Even at this distance, Brennan felt it. A pressure in his head, a faint ringing in his ears. His vision wavered slightly at the edges. Webb spoke through the gap. James, can you hear me? Silence. Then, Marcus, yes. Hearing, difficult. James, what do you need? How can we help you? A longer pause. When Reeves spoke again, his voice sounded pained. Cannot stop. Fields. Hurting. Ourselves. Others. Need. Containment. Webb leaned closer to the gap, ignoring Rodriguez's warning gesture. Containment? You want us to contain you? Yes. Please. Before. Spread. Too far. Chen spoke up. Dr. Reeves, how far does the effect spread? What's the range? Growing, every minute. Fields, resonating, with each other. 12 sources, amplifying. Brennan understood the implication immediately. They're not just individual EM generators, they're linked somehow, amplifying each other's fields. Webb nodded grimly. The coherent resonance. It's not just affecting them individually, they're creating a network effect. The more of them in proximity, the stronger the total field. Marcus, Reeves' voice came again, cannot bring us together. Must separate, isolate, quickly. Okay, James, we can do that. We have isolation cells, shielded rooms. We can help you. No, not enough. Field's too strong. Need, distance, miles between us. The implications sank in. These 12 people couldn't be near each other, couldn't be near anyone. They needed to be separated by miles to prevent their fields from amplifying. But Area 51 was a single facility. There weren't a dozen isolated locations miles apart. James, Webb said carefully, we need time to set that up. Can you and the others stay calm? Stay separated from each other until we can arrange proper containment? Trying, but losing. Coherence. Thinking. Difficult. Consciousness. Fragmenting. The other 2 figures at the door had moved closer. Their pulsing light was growing brighter, more erratic. Brennan could see their faces now in the glow. One was a young woman, maybe 30. The other was an older man. Both of them looked terrified. James, you need to move back, Webb urged. You're too close together. Your fields are amplifying. Cannot help. Drawn to each other. Like. Calling to like. One of the other figures spoke, the young woman. Her voice was higher pitched but equally distorted. Please, help us. Die. If you cannot fix. The words hit like a punch. She was asking them to kill her if they couldn't reverse the effect. Chen's voice was shaking. We're not going to kill you. We're going to figure this out. But Webb's expression said otherwise. He knew the odds. 12 people with their neural pathways fundamentally rewired, generating electromagnetic fields strong enough to kill all electronics within miles. Fields that were growing stronger. Fields that were drawing them together despite their desire to separate. "Chief," Brennan said quietly, "we need to evacuate the facility. If their fields keep amplifying, we're looking at a growing dead zone. No electronics, no communications, nothing. And if they're affecting people's nervous systems too." Rodriguez was already thinking several steps ahead. "We need to get a message out. To Nellis, to command. This facility is compromised. We need specialist teams, medical personnel, physicists who can understand what's happened." "How?" Park asked. "Everything electronic is dead. We have no radio, no satellite uplink, nothing." "The old way," Rodriguez said. "We send runners. Vehicles are dead, so they go on foot. 12 miles to the highway. They flag down civilian traffic, get to Nellis, report in person." "That'll take hours," Chen protested. "It's all we have." Through the door gap, Reeves spoke again. His voice was weaker now, more strained. "Marcus, something else. You should know." "What is it, James?" "The test wasn't accident." Webb froze. "What?" "Director Castellano. He knew risk. He wanted this, wanted to see what would happen to us." The bunker went silent. Everyone was processing what they'd just heard. The test that had destroyed 12 lives wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately allowed it to proceed, knowing the risks. "James, are you certain?" Webb's voice was barely a whisper. "Heard him, before test. Told, lead scientist, to push. Parameters, beyond safe. Levels. Said, acceptable losses. For potential. Breakthrough." Brennan looked at Rodriguez. The chief's face was stone, but his eyes were furious. Somewhere in this facility, probably safe in one of the deeper bunkers, was a man who'd turned 12 people into human weapons as an experiment. And that man was going to answer for it. Rodriguez made his decision quickly. "Webb, you stay here and coordinate with Reeves and the others. Try to keep them separated. Keep them calm. Park, organize the evacuation. Get runners to Nellis. Brennan, you're with me. We're finding Castellano." "Sir, we should focus on containment," Park protested. "Going after the director can wait." "No, it can't." Rodriguez's voice was cold. "If Reeves is right, if this was deliberate, then Castellano might have information about reversal procedures, research notes, contingency plans. He wouldn't run this kind of experiment without documentation." Brennan understood. It wasn't just about justice. It was about finding a cure. Rodriguez selected 4 more security personnel to join them. 6 men, armed, with whatever functional lights they could scrounge. Webb provided them with the last known location of Director Castellano's office, deep in the administrative section of the facility. Before they left, Webb pulled Brennan aside. "There's something you should know about Castellano. He's not just some bureaucrat. He has a PhD in theoretical physics. Worked on the Philadelphia experiment back in the 40s, supposedly. He's brilliant, and he's absolutely ruthless when it comes to advancing his research. How long has he been running things here?" 15 years. In that time, there have been incidents. Equipment failures with casualties that were never fully explained. Test subjects who volunteered for experiments and were never seen again. Nothing provable. Nothing that made it into official reports. But rumors. Always rumors. They moved out into the facility. Dawn was still hours away. The darkness was complete except for their lights. As they walked, Brennan noticed something unsettling. The temperature had dropped even further. His breath came out in visible clouds now. It had to be below freezing, which made no sense for the Nevada desert in March. "You feel that?" one of the security team asked. "It's getting colder." Rodriguez nodded. "The EEM fields, they're affecting more than just electronics. They're pulling energy out of the environment somehow." They passed one of the affected personnel. She was standing in the middle of a courtyard, her body pulsing with that eerie white light. She wasn't moving, just standing there, swaying slightly. As they kept their distance and circled around her, Brennan saw her face. Eyes open but unfocused, like she was sleepwalking. "Keep moving," Rodriguez ordered. "Don't engage unless necessary." The administrative building was a 3-story structure near the center of the complex. Most of it was offices, conference rooms, classified document storage. Castellano's office was on the 3rd floor, corner suite with a view of the hangars. They climbed the stairs in darkness, their footsteps echoing. On the 3rd floor, they found Castellano's door, locked. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. He put his boot through it. The office was empty, but there were signs of recent occupation. Papers scattered across the desk. A half-full coffee cup, still slightly warm. He'd been here recently. Brennan moved to the desk, shining his light across the documents. Technical specifications, mathematical equations, and photographs. Dozens of photographs of the test subjects from Hangar 18, taken over the course of several months. Medical records, psychological evaluations. He was studying them, Brennan said, all 12 of them. These aren't random volunteers. He selected them specifically. Rodriguez picked up one of the photographs. A young woman, the same one they'd seen asking to die. What was he looking for? A voice answered from the doorway. Compatibility. They spun, weapons raised. Director Castellano stood there, hands raised, a small penlight in one hand. He was in his 70s, gray hair neatly combed despite the chaos, wearing a suit and tie like this was just another day at the office. "Don't shoot," he said calmly. "I'm unarmed, and I'm here to help." "Help?" Rodriguez's voice was filled with contempt. "You destroyed 12 people, turned them into something inhuman. Reeves told us everything. You knew the risks, and you pushed the test anyway." Castellano stepped into the office, moving slowly. "Dr. Reeves has a limited perspective on what actually happened. Yes, I authorized exceeding the safety parameters, but not for the reasons you think." "Then enlighten us," Brennan said, his pistol still aimed at the director. Castellano moved to his desk, set down his light, and pulled out a file folder. Project Dreamcatcher wasn't about creating weapons. That was the cover story to get Pentagon funding. The real purpose was far more ambitious. He opened the folder, revealing more photographs. These were different. Astronomical images, radio telescope data, signal analysis charts. In 1977, we received a signal. The WOW signal, the public called it. 72 seconds of narrowband radio transmission from deep space. The scientific community dismissed it as a fluke, never repeated. But they were wrong. We've been receiving similar signals ever since. Dozens of them. All from the same source. All containing the same basic pattern. Rodriguez didn't lower his weapon. "What does this have to do with turning 12 people into walking EM generators?" "Everything," Castellano said. "We spent 20 years trying to decode those signals. Every attempt failed. Then, 5 years ago, one of our linguists made a breakthrough. The signals weren't language. They were a template, a set of instructions for modifying human neural architecture to enable a new form of communication." Brennan felt his blood run cold. "You're saying aliens sent instructions on how to modify human brains? Not aliens. That's an inadequate term. An intelligence, yes. Non-human. But whether extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional, or something else entirely, we don't know. What we do know is that the signals were an invitation, a way to establish contact. So you experimented on 12 people," Rodriguez said, his voice shaking with rage. "Turned them into guinea pigs for first contact? They volunteered," Castellano said firmly. "Every single one of them. I showed them the data, explained the risks, and they agreed. Dr. Reeves, Dr. Patterson, Lieutenant Chen, all of them. They understood they might not survive. They understood the process might be irreversible. But they also understood the implications. Contact with a non-human intelligence. The advancement of human knowledge by orders of magnitude. They're suffering," Brennan said. "They're terrified. One of them begged us to kill her." For the first time, Castellano's composure cracked. "I know. The transformation wasn't supposed to be this. traumatic. According to our models, the neural reorganization should have been smoother, less painful. The electromagnetic field generation was predicted, but not at this intensity. Something went wrong during the resonance cascade. You think? Rodriguez stepped closer. You have 12 people who can't think straight, can't speak properly, whose very presence kills electronics and hurts people. And for what? A signal from space that might not even be real. Oh, it's real, Castellano said quietly. And it's about to become very relevant. He picked up another document from his desk. The signal transmission schedule. Based on our analysis, the next scheduled broadcast begins in approximately 4 hours, at 0730 hours local time. And according to the signal pattern, this won't be another template. This will be the first actual communication attempt. Communication with who? Brennan asked. With whoever receives the template and successfully implements it. With our 12 test subjects. The intelligence on the other end of those signals has been waiting for us to create receivers capable of understanding their transmission method. That's what those 12 people are now. Living antennas tuned to a frequency human technology can't detect. The implications crashed over Brennan like a wave. You turned them into receivers. They're going to get a message directly beamed into their brains. Yes. And we have no idea what that message will be. Orders, information, a test of their capabilities. We're venturing into completely unknown territory. Rodriguez grabbed Castellano by his collar. We're evacuating this facility. We're getting those people medical help, and you're going to tell your story to a military tribunal that will almost certainly put you in prison for the rest of your life. You can't evacuate, Castellano said. Not before 0730. If those 12 people aren't here to receive the transmission, we'll miss our only chance to establish contact. This is the most important moment in human history, Chief. You can court-martial me afterward. But let me see this through. They're suffering, Brennan repeated. Every minute they're in that state is torture, I know. And I will carry that guilt until the day I die. But we're past the point of no return. The transformation is complete. The only path forward is through. Rodriguez released him, taking a step back. Webb said your fields are amplifying, growing stronger. If we keep all 12 of them here, what happens? Castellano met his eyes. I don't know. That wasn't in the models. The resonance cascade created variables we didn't account for. It's possible the field strength will plateau. It's also possible it will continue growing exponentially until... He trailed off. Until what? Brennan demanded. Until it reaches critical mass. Until the combined field is strong enough to affect organic neural tissue at long range. Everyone in the facility. Everyone in the surrounding area. Miles, maybe. All of our nervous systems suddenly exposed to the same field that transformed those 12 people. The bunker fell silent. They weren't just dealing with 12 victims. They were dealing with a potential cascade event that could affect thousands of people. And in 4 hours, an unknown intelligence from deep space was going to make contact with the only 12 humans capable of receiving its message. We need to make a decision, Rodriguez said. Evacuate and break the chain of command protocol by removing ourselves from potential contact. Or stay and see this through. Brennan thought about those 12 people. About Dr. Reeves struggling to speak. About the young woman begging for death. We stay, he heard himself say, but we give them a choice. We tell them everything, and if they want to stop before the transmission, we help them. Even if it means... He couldn't finish the sentence, but they all knew what he meant. They returned to the command bunker with Castellano in custody. The decision about whether to stay or evacuate wasn't theirs alone to make. It belonged to the 12 people whose bodies had been transformed into living receivers. Rodriguez opened the blast door wider this time. 6 inches became 2 feet. The pulsing light from the 3 figures outside flooded in, along with that oppressive sensation of electromagnetic pressure. Webb stepped forward to address them. James, can you understand me? Yes, Marcus, understanding, improving. We found Castellano. He told us everything, about the signals, about the template, about the transmissions scheduled for 0730 hours. Webb paused. He says you all volunteered for this. Is that true? A long silence. Then Reeves spoke, his words coming slightly more clearly now. Yes, we knew. Risks. We accepted. The young woman spoke next. Her voice was steadier than before. But we didn't know would be this painful, this wrong. I understand, Webb said gently. And you have a choice now. We can evacuate, get you separated from each other. The transmission will come and go without you. Or you can stay. You can receive whatever message is coming. But staying means risk. Your fields are amplifying. If the transmission makes things worse, we might not be able to help you. Reeves' glowing form shifted. If we leave, opportunity lost. Forever? Possibly, Webb admitted. We don't know if the transmission will repeat. This might be the only chance. Another voice joined from the darkness beyond. A man's voice, deeper. Show us. Castellano. Want to. Hear from him. Rodriguez pulled Castellano forward to the door. The director looked at the three glowing figures, and for the first time, Brennan saw genuine emotion on his face. Grief. Guilt. I'm sorry, Castellano said simply. The models were wrong. I was wrong. You're suffering because of my calculations, my arrogance, my belief that I could control variables I didn't fully understand. Tell us, truth, Reeves said. The signal. What is it, really? Castellano took a breath. In 1943, the Navy conducted an experiment called the Philadelphia Experiment. The official story is that it was an attempt to make a ship invisible to radar. The truth is more complex. We were experimenting with electromagnetic field manipulation on a scale never attempted before. The USS Eldridge. October 28, 1943. Brennan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He'd heard rumors about the Philadelphia experiment. Sailors fused into bulkheads. Men driven insane. A ship that allegedly teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk and back. The experiment succeeded, Castellano continued, but not in the way we intended. We didn't make the ship invisible. We made it permeable. Opened a kind of doorway, a tunnel through space, possibly through dimensions. And something came through, an intelligence. Not hostile, as far as we could tell, just curious, observing. It communicated? Webb asked. Not in language, in concepts. Transmitted directly into the minds of the crew members who survived. Most of them went mad from it. Their brains weren't equipped to process that kind of information. But a few adapted, changed. Their neural structures reorganized to accommodate the new input. Like us, the young woman said. Like you. Those men, the ones who adapted. They lived for years afterward. Decades, some of them. But they were changed. They could sense things others couldn't. Electromagnetic fields, radio signals. They claimed they could still hear the intelligence from the other side, trying to communicate. The signals, Reeves said, understanding dawning. The wow signal. They came from that intelligence? Yes, it's been trying to establish proper communication for decades. The template in the signals, it's based on what happened to those sailors. A refined version. A deliberate process instead of an accident. I thought we could do it safely this time, with controlled conditions, volunteer subjects, proper medical support. But you couldn't, the deeper male voice said. No, I couldn't, and I'm sorry. Brennan watched the 12 glowing figures, 3 at the door, 9 others visible in the distance around the facility. They were conferring somehow, communicating without words. He could see their lights pulsing in synchronization. Finally, Reeves spoke for all of them. We will stay. We will receive transmission. But Castellano, if this makes us worse, if this hurts us more, you will answer for it. I know, Castellano said quietly. The next 4 hours were a surreal waiting period. The 12 transformed personnel gathered in a loose perimeter around the facility, staying far enough apart to minimize field amplification, but close enough to communicate. Personnel who chose to evacuate were given permission to leave. About half the staff headed for the highway on foot. Those who stayed, including Brennan, took up positions where they could observe without being too close to the transformed individuals. They had no way to record what was about to happen. No cameras, no audio equipment. Everything would be witness testimony only. Webb set up a makeshift observation post in a building with a clear view of the courtyard where most of the 12 had congregated. Brennan joined him there, along with Rodriguez, Chen, and Castellano under guard. "What do you think will happen?" Chen asked as 0730 approached. "I don't know," Webb admitted. If Castellano is right, if the intelligence has been trying to communicate for 50 years, this transmission might be anything. A greeting, a warning, instructions, questions, or a command, Rodriguez said darkly. Castellano didn't respond. At 0720, the 12 figures began moving differently. Their pulsing lights synchronized completely. They all turned to face the same direction, northeast, toward the sky. "They're sensing something," Webb said. "The transmission is starting." At 0725, the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Frost began forming on the windows. The electromagnetic fields were intensifying. At 0728, one of the transformed personnel began to scream. Not in pain, in shock, like someone experiencing something overwhelming. Then another joined. Then another. "What's happening?" Chen grabbed Webb's arm. "They're receiving. Whatever's being transmitted, it's coming through." At exactly 7:30 hours, all 12 of them stopped moving, stopped making sounds. They stood perfectly still, their lights blazing brighter than ever. So bright, Brennan had to look away. The silence lasted 3 minutes. Then, as one, they all turned. Not toward the sky anymore, toward the administrative building, toward Castellano's office. "Oh no," Castellano whispered. "What?" Rodriguez demanded. "They're not receiving a message. They're receiving coordinates, spatial coordinates, something in the facility, something the intelligence wants them to find." The 12 figures began moving, fast, faster than they'd moved before, converging on the administrative building from all directions. "We need to get there first," Rodriguez said. "Find whatever they're looking for before they do." They ran through the pre-dawn darkness, racing against 12 beings who could move with inhuman speed. When they reached Castellano's office, they found it exactly as they'd left it, but the 12 were already there, gathered in the hallway outside, waiting. Reeves stepped forward. His voice was different now, clearer, more controlled. "It told us where to look. It told us what you've been hiding." Castellano. "I don't know what you're talking about," Castellano said, but his voice wavered. "In the wall," the young woman said. "Behind the bookshelf, there's a safe with the real research." Rodriguez didn't hesitate. He moved to the bookshelf, pulled it away from the wall. Behind it, a small wall safe. He turned to Castellano. "The combination. Now." Castellano's face had gone pale. "You don't understand. The combination." Castellano gave it. Rodriguez opened the safe and pulled out a file folder. Old, yellowed with age, stamped with classifications that had been obsolete for decades. Webb opened it, began reading. His face went from confusion to horror. "Marcus?" Reeves asked. "What does it say?" Webb looked up at Castellano. "You son of a bitch. There was no intelligence, no entity from another dimension trying to communicate." "What?" Brennan moved closer. Webb held up the documents. The signals, the WOW signal, all of them. They were artificial, generated by a transmitter that Castellano himself designed and hid in a remote location. There never was any alien intelligence. It was all a fabrication. The bunker seemed to tilt beneath Brennan's feet. "The Philadelphia experiment survivors," Webb continued, his voice shaking. "They weren't changed by contact with another dimension. They were poisoned, deliberately exposed to experimental electromagnetic weapons that destroyed their neural tissue, and Castellano covered it up, made it look like something mysterious, something worth studying." Rodriguez turned to Castellano, his weapon raised. "Why?" Castellano met his eyes. "Because the military would never fund research into deliberate human neural modification. But if I could convince them we needed to create receivers for alien contact, create a threat scenario, they'd give me unlimited resources. 50 years of research, 50 years of perfecting the technique. Perfecting it for what? Brennan demanded. For this, for creating controllable human weapons. The electromagnetic fields aren't a side effect. They're the primary feature. Imagine soldiers who can disable any electronic system just by proximity, who can be remotely guided to targets, who can... He never finished. Reeves moved, fast, impossibly fast. One moment he was 15 feet away. The next he had his glowing hands on either side of Castellano's head. Castellano screamed, and in that scream Brennan heard something that would haunt him forever. Not pain, understanding, because Reeves wasn't killing him. He was transforming him. Castellano's body convulsed. His screams cut off abruptly as the electromagnetic field from Reeves's hands interfaced with his nervous system. Brennan watched, unable to move, as the director's skin began to emit that same eerie white light. "Stop him!" Rodriguez shouted, but nobody moved. What could they do? Getting close to Reeves meant exposure to the same field. They'd end up like Castellano. The transformation took less than 2 minutes. When Reeves released him, Castellano collapsed to the floor, his body pulsing with light. His breathing was rapid, panicked. His hands opened and closed spasmodically, like he'd forgotten how they worked. Reeves stepped back, his voice still distorted but carrying a note of grim satisfaction. "Now you understand. Now you feel what you did to us." Castellano tried to speak. The sounds that came out weren't words, just garbled phonemes, his brain struggling to coordinate the muscles required for speech. He looked up at them with eyes full of terror and incomprehension. "Jesus Christ," Chen whispered. Webb moved closer but stopped at a safe distance. "James, what have you done?" "Transforming him doesn't change anything, doesn't fix what's been done to you." "We know," the young woman said. Her voice was clearer now, more controlled. But he needed to understand the cost of his ambition. "We were told. We were volunteers," another voice added, the older man. "We believed. We were part of first contact, historic moment. We gave everything for a lie." Rodriguez lowered his weapon. "I understand, I do. But we need to focus on containment now. 13 of you. The field amplification is manageable," Reeves interrupted. "We've learned to control it, somewhat. The transmission, it didn't come from alien intelligence, but our minds, synchronized. During the resonance, we can communicate, coordinate, consciously now." Brennan understood the implication. The 12 had been individuals suffering in isolation. Now they were something else. A network. 13 minds linked by electromagnetic fields, able to share thoughts and coordinate actions. That made them more dangerous than Castellano had ever intended. Dawn was breaking outside. The first light of March 16, 1997. Rodriguez made a command decision. "We need to establish communication with Nellis. Get proper authorization for handling this situation. Brennan, you and 2 others make for the highway. Flag down transport. Contact the base. I need officials here, specialists, people who can make decisions above my pay grade." Brennan nodded. He, Chen, and 1 other security officer headed out on foot. The 12-mile walk to the highway took them 3 hours. When they reached it, they flagged down a Nevada highway patrol car. The trooper was skeptical until Chen showed her military ID. "We have a facility, deep storage, built during the Cold War for containing biological weapons, completely isolated. Faraday cages rated for extreme EM fields. We can separate them, 1 per containment cell, space them far enough apart to prevent field amplification." Webb, who'd been brought in to consult, spoke up. "They're people, not weapons. They deserve treatment, rehabilitation." "Dr. Webb," the colonel interrupted. "These individuals generate electromagnetic fields strong enough to disable critical infrastructure. Hospitals, communications networks, aircraft navigation systems. If even one of them were to escape containment and enter a populated area, the casualties would be catastrophic. So you're going to lock them up forever?" Webb's voice shook. We're going to contain them humanely while we research potential reversal methods. If a cure is found, they'll be treated. But until then, containment is the only option. Brennan watched the 12 transformed personnel being loaded into specialized transport vehicles. Each person was placed in a separate container lined with copper mesh, Faraday cages. As they were moved, he saw Reeves turn his glowing head toward where Brennan stood. Their eyes met. In that moment, Brennan saw something that chilled him more than anything else that night. Reeves wasn't angry, wasn't pleading. He looked resigned, like he'd known this was how it would end from the moment he volunteered. Castellano was loaded last. Unlike the others, he was sedated, still pulsing with light but unconscious. Brennan wondered if he'd ever regain enough neural function to understand what he'd become. As the convoy prepared to depart, the colonel pulled Rodriguez aside. Brennan was close enough to overhear. "Chief, your facility needs to be operational again within 30 days. We're issuing a cover story. Power failure due to experimental generator malfunction. No casualties. No transformed personnel. As far as official records show, this never happened. What about the personnel who evacuated? The witnesses? They'll be debriefed and reassigned. Standard procedure for classified incidents. Anyone who talks faces court-martial. And the research? Castellano's work? The colonel's expression was unreadable. That's above your classification level, Chief. Rodriguez understood what wasn't being said. The research would continue, somewhere else, under different leadership. The military had learned valuable data from this disaster. They weren't going to waste it. 3 days later, Brennan was transferred to Camp Pendleton. His service record made no mention of Area 51. When he tried to contact other personnel who'd been there that night, he found they'd all been similarly scattered across different assignments. Patricia Chen went to Japan. Rodriguez retired early. Webb disappeared entirely from any database Brennan could access. The official story was exactly what the colonel had said. Power failure at an undisclosed facility. Damage repaired. No casualties. The local media ran a brief story about unusual lights seen near Groom Lake on the night of March 15th, but it was buried under coverage of the Hale-Bopp comet that was visible that month. A few conspiracy theorists picked up on the story, posted about it on early internet forums. But without evidence, without witnesses willing to talk, it became just another Area 51 rumor in a sea of rumors. Brennan never saw any of the 13 again. He didn't know where they'd been taken, or if they were even still alive. He didn't know if anyone ever found a way to reverse what had been done to them. What he did know, what kept him awake some nights, was that somewhere in the military-industrial complex, researchers were studying Castellano's work, learning from his mistakes, refining his techniques, because the idea was too valuable to abandon. Soldiers who could disable enemy electronics just by being present. Personnel who could coordinate actions through thought alone. Human beings transformed into living weapons. The experiment at Area 51 hadn't failed. It had succeeded too well. And now someone, somewhere, was trying to do it again. More carefully this time, with better containment protocols, with test subjects who truly understood what they were volunteering for. Or maybe not. Maybe they'd learned nothing from Castellano's lies. Brennan left military contracting 6 months later. Couldn't stomach it anymore. The secrets, the compartmentalization, the way people became numbers in classified reports. But he never forgot the look in Reeves's eyes as they loaded him into that transport. The resignation, the understanding that he'd traded his humanity for a lie, and there was no getting it back. 13 people walked out of the darkness at Area 51 that night. None of them ever walked back into the light. So here's where I have to be completely honest with you. That story is built on fragments, whispers, documents that may or may not be authentic, the kind of sources that keep you up at night, wondering if they're real or if someone's playing an elaborate game. I can verify certain things. There were unusual seismic readings near Groom Lake on March 15, 1997, recorded by civilian monitoring stations. Several residents of Rachel, Nevada, reported seeing strange lights and experiencing radio interference that night. There were reports of a brief power outage affecting some of the surrounding area. These are documented facts you can look up. What I can't verify is what actually happened inside Area 51 that night. The facility doesn't officially exist, so official records don't officially exist either. The personnel I mentioned, Brennan, Chen, Rodriguez, they're pseudonyms. If those people are real, they're not talking, at least not on the record. The document I based this story on came from a source who claimed to be a former EG&G contractor. EG&G was a real company that provided security and technical services at classified facilities, including Area 51, from the 1960s through the 1990s. The document described Project Dreamcatcher in detail: technical specifications, personnel lists, timeline of events, all of it stamped with classification markings that looked legitimate. But here's the thing about leaked classified documents. They're either real, which means someone committed a serious crime to get them to you, or they're fake, which means someone went to elaborate lengths to create disinformation. Either way, you're dealing with material designed to be difficult to verify. The Philadelphia experiment connection is interesting because that's its own rabbit hole of truth and fiction. The Navy has officially denied the experiment happened. They've released statements saying the USS Eldridge's deck logs show she was nowhere near Philadelphia in October 1943. But conspiracy theories persist, fueled by witness testimony that's impossible to verify decades later. What I find compelling about this story, whether it's true or not, is how plausible it is. Not the alien contact part, obviously, but the human experimentation part, the weaponization of neuroscience part, the idea that someone might justify destroying lives in pursuit of a strategic advantage. We know the military has conducted experiments on unwitting subjects before. That's not conspiracy theory, that's documented history. MK Ultra, the Tuskegee experiments, radiation exposure studies during the Cold War. These happened. We have the declassified documents. We have the congressional hearings. We have the victims' testimony. So when I read about Project Dreamcatcher, about volunteers who thought they were participating in first contact, but were actually being turned into electromagnetic weapons, my first reaction isn't, "That's impossible." It's, "How would we know if it did happen?" That's what keeps me researching these stories. Not because I believe every leaked document or anonymous testimony, but because some of them might be true, and the ones that are true deserve to be heard. I think about those 12 people, whether they're real or fictional, about how they volunteered for something noble and got something horrific instead, about how their suffering was covered up, their existence erased from official records, about how they're still out there somewhere, if the story is true, still locked in Faraday cages, still hoping someone will find a way to reverse what was done to them. Or maybe they're not. Maybe this entire story is fiction, designed to make you distrust the military-industrial complex. Maybe it's disinformation, meant to hide something else that happened at Area 51 that night. Maybe it's a cautionary tale someone made up to warn against the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition. I don't know, and that's the honest truth. What I do know is this: when you stand guard at a classified facility, when you're told, "Don't ask questions about what's behind that fence," there's a reason for that order. Sometimes that reason is legitimate national security, protecting sources and methods, keeping adversaries from learning our capabilities, but sometimes that reason is covering up mistakes, hiding crimes, making sure the public never learns what was done in their name with their tax dollars. The truth, as usual, is probably somewhere in the middle. I want to thank all of you for listening to this story. To my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible, thank you for believing in what we're doing here. To my YouTube members, I appreciate every single one of you. And to everyone else who takes the time to watch these videos, to think critically about what you're hearing, to do your own research, and come to your own conclusions, thank you. Keep asking questions. Keep demanding transparency. Keep remembering that the people in these stories, whether they're real or not, represent real risks, real ethical questions about what we're willing to do in pursuit of power. May God be with each and every one of you, no matter what you are dealing with, and I will see you in the next episode.